Let us commence with today's narrative. Emma and I had been married for a decade, experiencing the typical fluctuations of any relationship. However, recently, her demeanor had shifted. She appeared distant, her phone perpetually in hand, and she seemed to smile at messages more frequently than at me. I endeavored to dismiss my concerns, attributing her behavior to stress, yet an unsettling intuition persisted. One evening, I returned home earlier than usual and immediately sensed something amiss. Emma was hurriedly tidying up, her movements excessively frantic, and her expression revealed both surprise and a trace of anxiety upon seeing me. "You're home early," she remarked, her tone unnaturally high-pitched. "Yes, things concluded sooner than anticipated," I responded, my gaze scanning the room. An unfamiliar scent, reminiscent of cologne, permeated the air. "What does that smell?" I inquired, attempting to maintain a casual demeanor. Emma paused before laughing awkwardly. "I experimented with a new air freshener today. Perhaps it was a feeble justification. Nevertheless, I feigned agreement, albeit something remained unsettling to me. Her tone and body language were incongruous. Later that night, as Emma feigned sleep, I lay in bed with my thoughts in turmoil. Was I merely imagining things, or was there something more amiss? The distance between us had been increasing recently. We had not shared any intimate moments in the past 2 weeks, and even prior to that, our interactions felt contrived and almost mechanical. Emma consistently provided excuses, citing fatigue and stress. Or just disinclined, I endeavored to be empathetic. However, it became increasingly difficult to overlook the growing chasm between us. As I gazed at the ceiling, my sensation of unease intensified. Something was off, and I could not dispel the feeling. 2 days later, upon returning from work, I encountered our neighbor Jake outside, positioned near his driveway. He lifted a hand to halt me as I exited my vehicle, saying, "Hey, Tom." Jake called, glancing around before lowering his voice. "Can we talk for a minute?" I nodded, both curious and apprehensive. "Sure, what's up?" Jake shifted uncomfortably. "I wasn't sure if I should say something, but over the last few days, I've noticed a man leaving your house while you were at work. He was there today as well. I thought it might be suspicious, and I figured you should know." His words struck me like a punch to the gut. My thoughts raced as I fought to maintain a neutral appearance. "What did he resemble?" I inquired, my voice strained. Jake depicted an unfamiliar man, and although I was hesitant to draw conclusions, my discomfort persisted. "I deemed it prudent to inform you." I expressed my gratitude to him, managing a forced grin before entering, my heart racing as the unease evolved into something more sinister. Emma was in the kitchen preparing dinner, her face lighting up as she saw me. "Hey, you're home," she said cheerfully, as if everything was perfectly normal. I walked over, forcing a casual tone. "Yeah, long day. What did you get up to today?" Emma paused for a fraction of a second, then smiled. "Oh, nothing much, just went out with some friends, had lunch, and did a little shopping." I nodded, pretending to buy her story, though every word she said felt like a dagger. Jake's warning echoed in my mind. I knew she was lying, and that only made me more suspicious. Later that night, as Emma took a shower, I saw my chance. Her phone was on the nightstand, the screen dark. I hesitated for a moment, then grabbed it quickly, unlocking it. My hands trembled as I scrolled through her messages. There they were, texts with someone named Marcus. My stomach turned as I read through the conversation. Flirty messages, heart emojis, and the worst of all: "Come to my house today. My husband is at work and won't be back until late." I felt a cold wave of shock wash over me. The betrayal was blatant, undeniable. Just then the sound of water stopped. My heart raced as I quickly put her phone back on the nightstand, trying to steady my breathing. I couldn't get caught. Not yet. Emma came out of the bathroom wrapped in a towel, oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. I smiled at her, pretending nothing had changed, but inside everything was different. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, unable to shake the images of what I had seen on Emma's phone. I was incredulous. The woman I had cherished and relied upon for years was introducing another guy into our residence. The betrayal felt like a knife twisting in my abdomen. The next morning, I made a decision. I couldn't confront her without solid proof. I needed to know the full extent of what was going on. So after Emma left the house, I went out and bought several hidden cameras. I placed them carefully around the house, one in the living room another in the hallway, and one in our bedroom. Each camera was discreet, blending in with the surroundings. When I finished, I felt a strange mix of anticipation and dread. I had to know, but part of me feared what I would find that evening. When I got back from work, I immediately checked the footage. My hands were shaking as I opened the app and watched the recordings from earlier that day. There, he was, the man Jake had described. He entered the house just after noon wearing a smug grin as Emma welcomed him inside. They kissed right there in the living room before moving to the couch, laughing and talking as if they didn't have a care in the world. My blood boiled as I saw them acting so comfortably, so boldly in the space that was supposed to be ours. They stayed for hours, completely unaware they were being watched. At one point, Emma whispered something in his ear, and they both disappeared into the bedroom. I watched as they kissed, then began undressing each other. After a few moments, I couldn't take it anymore. I closed the app, my heart pounding in my chest, overwhelmed with a mix of rage and hurt. I had all the proof I needed. Now it was time for action. I wanted revenge. I wanted Emma to feel the same pain, the same betrayal that had been eating away at me, and I was going to make sure she did. The next day, I made an appointment with a lawyer. I knew I had to secure my assets and finances before anything else. I wasn't going to let Emma walk away with a dime after what she had done. The last thing I needed was for her to benefit from my hard work, especially after the betrayal I just uncovered. The lawyer was professional, explaining the divorce process, how we could separate everything, and what steps I needed to take to ensure I got what was rightfully mine. After leaving the office, I felt a small sense of relief, but the anger inside me was still boiling. I needed to think of the perfect way to make Emma understand the full weight of what she had done. It was hard to focus, but one thing was clear: she had to feel the consequences. Later that evening, I checked the cameras again. My hands were shaking as I watched the footage. The man Marcus had come back to the house again. It seemed like she was bringing him over every day now, as if our home had become their secret rendezvous spot. The sight of him walking into the house filled me with fury. How dare she? I couldn't let this go on. I needed to make her pay for what she was doing to me, to us. And then just like that, an idea came to me. It was perfect. It would expose everything, and it would hit her where it hurt the most. I leaned back, a twisted satisfaction creeping in as I thought about what I was going to do next. My idea hit me like a bolt of lightning. It was perfect, cruel, and exactly what she deserved. I would fly her parents in without telling her, to surprise her. They hadn't seen Emma in months, and I knew they'd be excited to visit. I'd take care of everything, booking their flights, arranging their stay, and keep it all a secret from her. I'd pick them up from the airport and make sure that during that time Emma would be at home with Marcus. She'd think it was just another normal day, but when I would bring her parents back to the house, we'd catch them caught in the act right in front of her parents. There would be no way for her to deny what was happening. A few hours later, I called her parents, making sure Emma wasn't around to overhear. I told them about my plan to fly them in as a surprise for Emma, explaining that it had been a while since they'd seen her and that it would be a nice gesture. They were immediately on board, excited to surprise her. After hanging up, I decided to check Emma's phone again. I scrolled through her messages, and sure enough, there it was. She had texted Marcus, telling him to come over tomorrow around 4:00 p.m. Everything was aligning flawlessly. Her plan and mine were meticulously synchronized. I secured the tickets, confirmed the arrangements with her parents, and ensured all was in order. The following morning, I informed Emma that I would be working late, thereby granting her ample space to execute her plans with Marcus. I aimed to ensure that everything proceeded seamlessly, alleviating any sense of urgency or anxiety on her part. I took a day off from work, fully aware of the preparations required for the impending event. I spent several hours at a cafe, allowing the gravity of my forthcoming actions to resonate. After a brief meal, I proceeded to the airport. The timing had to be impeccable. Emma's parents were scheduled to arrive at 4 p.m., coinciding precisely with Marcus's arrival at the house. Upon their landing, I promptly reviewed the home surveillance footage to ensure everything was in order. I scrutinized the recordings and confirmed that Marcus had arrived as anticipated. The timing was impeccable. I collected Emma's parents and proceeded directly to the residence, feeling a surge of anticipation as I drove. Everything was unfolding as planned. Upon arrival, I parked the vehicle and approached the front door, ensuring that Emma and Marcus remained unaware of our presence. I quietly opened the door and entered, gesturing for her parents to follow. We had scarcely entered the living room when we discerned muffled sounds emanating from the bedroom, sounds I recognized all too well. My heart raced, yet I maintained composure, turning to her parents and whispering for them to remain silent in order to surprise her. We advanced stealthily down the hallway, drawing closer to the bedroom. The sounds intensified, definite moans. I glanced at her parents, and we exchanged a knowing smile.